Well, it's been a very difficult time. I mean, who'd have said that shortly after we left the EU, we would be impacted immediately by the pandemic as well, in a matter of days. Within 40 days, we were locking down. So it's been an incredibly difficult time. We've done so much work in that period. And what we wanted to do is to achieve the future relationship with the European Union that we want for Gibraltar in a way that is safe, secure, and beneficial. But that takes a lot of hard work. It's not something that can be done quickly.
Yeah, it's taken longer, I think, than any of us anticipated. We're still in limbo 3 years on. Some talks took place last week. I know that you're still continuing these this week. Can you tell us, have we moved forward in any way, particularly on those sticky issues of immigration and movement of goods?
Well, I would say that we are not actually in limbo to the extent that we have a relationship with the EU, which is based on an agreement whilst the negotiation has been ongoing, which is much better than the relationship with the EU could have been if we were looking at the letter of what we were entitled to, or indeed what we might allow on a reciprocal basis for those who want to come to Gibraltar. So just in terms of the attitude and the relationship, this is in a much better place than history tells us we would likely have been, given what the relationship has been like in the past. But it is true that we have been edging closer. We have not been taking huge strides towards each other. And that is because, of course, the United Kingdom and the European Union have equities in this issue, which relate to the interaction of the TCA with the EU acquis, the protection by the EU of the internal legal order of the EU and the single market, which we see played out every day in the discussions about Northern Ireland, etc., on our international television screens and on the news there. And of course, the issues that relate to Gibraltar and Spain, where we all have skin in the game of the historic issues, which we're trying to put to one side, but also the local issues that are relevant and important to all of us, and how the historic issues affect even the day-to-day transactional issues. So it is extraordinarily complicated. It would be impossible to have achieved any sooner, even with goodwill. So the fact that it's taking as long as it's taking is not a demonstration of an absence of goodwill. It is actually a demonstration of the presence of goodwill, that despite the challenges and the complexity, we keep at it and we're trying to achieve something which will frankly be historic, although we have to understand it is going to be different to the relationship that we have had before.
Okay, you say we're not in limbo, but everyone wants an agreement. Can I ask you whether you might expect an agreement before Easter, or is it more likely to be after Easter now?
I think it's important that we don't impose timelines on this issue because of the complexity that we've discussed. In other words, because there is goodwill and because there is extraordinary complexity, if we impose a hard time limit, we may just fall over the cliff, even though both parties want to continue. And once we set out hard time limits, it'll be difficult to row back from them, etc., etc. But I want to be very clear about something, that we've got to understand that this is a negotiation, and you don't go into a negotiation, especially if you are Gibraltar, 30,000 people, 2.5 square miles by 1 mile, and dictate to Spain, 60 odd million people, the United Kingdom, 70 million people, the European Union, 520 million people, what our terms are. We're defending our rights, we're defending our interests, we're having to understand how to accommodate some of the issues which are the commercial transactional issues that we have to understand, and do a balancing act between what we think is the right balance of what we achieve against what it is that we have to compromise on the non-fundamental, non-red line transactional commercial issues that are on the table and we have to resolve.
Okay, you talk about compromise. You've also stressed about the fact that if we don't have a treaty agreement, we're going to have to live with the downside of Brexit, that things could become uncomfortable. You've said in your New Year's message an agreement might be achieved that might be uncomfortable in some areas. So, Chief Minister, are you preparing us for an imperfect deal?
I am preparing you for an imperfect deal. Of course I am, because no deal is perfect. And the European Union will not have a perfect deal based on what it wanted. The United Kingdom will not have a perfect deal that works in exactly the same way as the TCA and therefore doesn't deviate. Spain will not have the deal that we all know she would want, with all of the areas in which she would potentially, if she were allowed, a blank canvas, to want to take all of the areas that concern us the most. And Gibraltar will have a deal that is the right balance of our interests and the right balance of what we consider to be the concession, not on sovereignty, not on fundamentals, not on red line issues, to the concerns that are appropriately put on the table by our negotiating counterparts on issues that are transactional but do not relate to sovereignty and the fundamentals, do not relate to sovereignty, jurisdiction, and control. That is the reality of what a deal is. Now, if that deal is better than leaving the European Union without a deal and having no negotiated outcome, then that is what makes the deal the right deal for this moment. But this is not a deal that we are going to dictate to the European Union, that we are going to take to Spain, and that the United Kingdom is going to sign on our behalf because we tell them so, because we are Gibraltar and we dictate to the world. Come on, wake up and smell the coffee. And that's not just Malaga, that's anyone who thinks that we can dictate this deal and we can come back with a deal that smells of divine roses because we say so. This is the real hard-nosed commercial and political world in which Gibraltar is plunged as a result of Brexit, and we have to deal with that world, and we have to emerge from that world with a deal that is imperfect, but is the right deal for this moment for Gibraltar, with that right balance of where our interests lie in compromise and where our interests lie in achieving that fluidity for persons and goods, and the market that it opens up for us, because of course our retailers will be able to sell to 520 million people who will be able to come to Gibraltar without any impediment, if we do the deal that we want to do, to buy in their stores and to take into the rest of the European Union without impediment. Getting that right is getting the right deal. It's not dictating the perfect deal that a plebiscite of 30,000 Gibraltarians might decide. I might stand on Mount Brussels and dictate to the European Commission. Ain't going to happen.
Chief Minister, one final question. The UK is expected to be the only major economy to shrink this year. How concerned should we be about that news for Gibraltar insofar as our post-Brexit future is concerned?
So we have to understand that Gibraltar is a mixed economy in the context of the relationship with the European Union and the United Kingdom. Our services sector depends almost entirely, if not greatly, on the United Kingdom. And there, of course, a recession will mean that the people have less money to spend. And in two key areas, gaming and insurance for vehicles, if they have less money to spend, they may buy less vehicles, they may take less profitable insurance, they may gamble a little less, they may have a flutter less often than they would often have a flutter, and that will affect our services industry. Of course, the Spanish economy is growing and the European economy is growing. The European economy is avoiding recession. We also do a lot with the European Union, and we have a great influence from the European Union in our economy, although perhaps not as great as from the United Kingdom. So it is a mixed bag for Gibraltar. Gibraltar always makes its own fortunes in this sense, and so the industry of everyone in Gibraltar, not the government, but every economic actor in Gibraltar. That means from the person who is cleaning to the person who is running a business, all of that together is what delivers the financial performance for Gibraltar, which is a country of 32,000 people, but of course has 15,000 additional people come in to work there every day, although they go back home every evening, and that affects our GDP per capita in a very unbalanced way, making the statistic really not reliable, as I say when I give it in Parliament.